So, like this one story comes to my mind, which I just can't help but share, is a lot of people get very surprised when I tell them Brahmaji had 5 heads and not 4.
And we took 3 women damaged characters from Ramayana, Shurpanaka, Ahalya and Sita.
So Deepa, now it's my turn to ask you questions.
Okay.
I heard you are also into Puranic stories. So can you tell me, how do you see it in your art form?
Well, okay. Yes, we, in a lot of sense, we are into Puranic stories. We, as in, I'm talking about the community of classical dancers itself. So, let me just go back, because you have introduced how Puranic stories are introduced to a very young age. So, by introducing them at a very young age, you're creating that what is called as a classical imagery of a hero, or you're giving them an ideal picture of this is who it is, and then the story also supports that picture, right? Now slowly when you grow older, then you're going, that first stage is called the Shrishtikrama stage in the traditional pedagogy.
Yes.
Because our pedagogies are not designed just from a class LKG
Yes,
to 12th standard,
of
or
course.
and then separates it as this one. Our pedagogy goes all the way from like that Aksharabhyasam
Yes.
to the end days.
Yes, yes.
Like for it's a journey, that entire journey that they are actually seeing. So from the Shrishtikrama phase, so first we learn how you introduce, and then there comes a stage where you have to little bit notch it up a little bit higher, where you go back again and again to the stories, where you understand it from the psychological point of view. I'm sure many people nowadays are doing that. Lot of these management gurus are also
Yes.
using Mahabharata as a tool to explain
Yes.
why, what complexities and etc.
Yeah, all boardroom battles and succession planning. In fact, Mahabharata is a big,
Strategy.
example of strategy and
Strategy.
succession planning and stuff like that. So,
right.
yeah.
So that has become very, very popular. But then we have our seniors, like you said, who are constantly returning back to the stories, where they keep the open. There is a certain month also where they keep it open, and then they engage, they read with that. For that entire month, they finish the Ramayana
Yes.
reading.
Yes.
And that becomes, why do they do that? And they do it as a ritual every year after year. Now that is done as a lived experience. That is a very beautiful thing. Most of our our grandparents, who were more rooted than
Yes.
where we are, they used to do it as a ritual, and I think that's why they had a lived experience, and the wisdom, they had a way in which they could pass it on to the
Yes.
little kids. To what level they will very sweetly bring it around, and then they will pass it
Yeah.
on. Okay, so that's the lived experience part of it. Now, as performing artists, theatre artists, classical theatre artists, classical dancers and actors, what we do, how we tell stories, is that we learn, our rigor, our practice is all moving towards how to embody the character. So we understand, we slip into the character, and we our rigor is taught to slip out of the character and move and switch between many things. So it's just not about character, Dipali. For us, the embody as an experience, it also teaches us to become a leaf, become a lotus, and then sway. If it is a leaf, sway like the leaf, and if it is a lotus, bloom like it
Wow.
as well.
Wow.
So that is a more intense way. So if imagine if you had to do it with just something as leaf and lotus, if you had to undergo it, if you had to capture the essence of what Rama is, or capture an essence of what Ravana was. So the psyche that you have to put yourself through to absorb it and bring it out in such nuanced manner in terms of a movement or in terms of a this one was, you know, like that's where, you know, our level of engagement and immersion into the Puranic tales becomes different.
Wow, Deepa. So a lot of times in my storytelling sessions, obviously I become the character, right? But this whole concept that you just told me, that signify a character using like a leaf or becoming a flower, that is like so out of the world, like an experience, I'm pretty sure. Especially, you know, like you just mentioned Ravan. So I just wanted to also connect that like in our Puranic stories, there are positive characters, negative characters, good, bad, but there is so much happening where one same character can be good as well as bad, positive as well as negative.
Right.
So what is your take, and how do you look at it from the way, you know, your experiences are?
It's a very wonderful question actually that you have asked, Dipali, because this is where the complexities kind of keep growing more. So I'm going to go back to the Natya Shastra's first chapter, where, you know, Brahmaji created the Natya as fifth Veda. He gave it to Bharata Muni, and then Bharata took it, and he went through it, he mastered it, and then came the first staging of the Natya as in the drama. And when we're talking about Natya Shastra, it's more like, you know, a science and art of dramaturgy. So the first Natya was staged, and do you know what the first Natya was?
What was it?
It is the Samudra Manthan.
Wow, okay.
This is exactly where we are, the good and the bad.
I can totally, yeah.
So they are churning the ocean.
Nice.
The good and bad are together constantly churning the ocean. So when the first Natya was staged, and everybody like clapped and they were like super excited, the gods were very excited. But then there was one person from the demigod segment who raised up and said that was not happy with the way in which things were portrayed in, and he raised out and he voiced out and said that I'm not happy with this portrayal because you're showing us in the bad light. He complained to Brahma, and that's when, you know, Brahma actually states the purpose of Natya. And this is very, very important. That's why I'm saying that while you started off with the Shrishti Krama, then you need to move into the Shikshana Krama, where you are going and constantly engaging with the text, and you're constantly seeking the wisdom from it. That manthan you have to keep doing over there. Now, once the manthan you are doing, then from that manthan you will get your answers.
Interesting.
Why do you need those answers? Because that's the phase where you go into the third segment of your pedagogy and living, which is your Rakshana Krama. You need the answers because you want to protect yourself. You want to know how to deal with situations and circumstances in your life by applying something. So let me give you an example. Okay, while earlier and all, Ramayana was portrayed as a linear, right? It's a very linear based storytelling.
Yes.
Now, for that age, it's okay.
It worked.
But for this age, when as dancers, when we are portraying, we are no more telling the stories in terms of, you know, this event happened, that event happened, that event, and you don't jump and move on episode after episode and what's in Ramayana. Now we take a character and we try to analyze the good and bad within the character.
Break down the character.
Yes, break down, deconstruct the character. For example, when I did my Nirmukti, Back to Nature, I obviously did this with two other classical dancers from different classical art form, and we took three women damaged characters from Ramayana: Shurpanaka, Ahalya, and Sita.
Interesting.
Okay, and because we know what happened to Sita after
Right.
after they returned back. But we don't know what happened to Shurpanakha after the war.
Yes.
And we don't know what happened to Ahalya after she was released.
Yes.
So in order to give a conclusion for their character, we spun a different tale, another parallel tale, so that those characters are also getting their thing, and there is a closure that can be associated for Shurpanakha, because if you actually look into the story of Ramayana, it is her. Everything starts, the dice is
Yes.
rolled only by her.
Yes.
So we kind of brought that closure because most of us are confused. We in a kind of flux, pain, we are dealing with pain.
Yes.
Like how Shurpanakha is, like once she got her nose cut, that's where the pain begins. That's where you are, you are remembering that anger, you remembering that humiliation which is turning into anger, and within that anger there are consequences that you're like the roll of the dials begins there.
Yes.
So that is something that recent times I actually saw a beautiful depiction of a take on Draupadi by Navya Natarajan. She is a Bharatanatyam dancer in Bangalore. She has very beautifully explored Draupadi. So I think the contemporary dancers of our age, we belong to the Gen X.
Yes.
So we are deep diving into bringing out the pearls in a different manner, I would say.
So Deepa, now just to connect with just now you mentioned, right, you guys took 3 beautiful feminine characters from our Puranas and you showed them in such different lights. So this really, I can't stop myself from thinking about the fact that there are so many characters in our stories who are portrayed in both, for the lack of words, positive and negative forms, though I should not be saying that. So, this one story comes to my mind, which I just can't help but share, is a lot of people get very surprised when I tell them Brahmaji had 5 heads and not 4. And what happened? So there's this whole story about how the 5th head was very egoistic and was very proud of itself, and then it had a race with Vishnu Bhagwan, and then the 5th head came and lied to Shivji, and that's when Shivji manifests into a lingam and all of that. And when it lies to Shivji, Shivji gets so angry that he manifests in the Kal Bhairav form. Right? And today we see Kal Bhairav form in very different light. And what happened was Kal Bhairav Baba got so angry that he severed the 5th head of Brahmaji. Right? And again, to connect it back to consequences, he had to face the consequences where he was banished. He was made to go around earth. He was banished to earth, where he was given a bowl and he was supposed to beg for his Brahmatya, for the sin that he committed. And what happens is, at that time, he is told that the minute you reach Kashi is when you will be liberated.
Correct.
And what happened when he got liberated? He became the Kotwal of Kashi, right? He ended up saving Kashi from so many demons, from so many disasters.
He cleansed Kashi.
He cleansed Kashi, right? So this whole concept of good, it comes into picture here, where there is, nothing is good or bad if we think of it that way. It is how we take it. What are we taking from our Puranas?
What is important is the cleansing aspect of it, and that's why we have to go over there to Kashi to probably, introspect.
Exactly.
And you should know how to introspect and bring about the, changes and things like that. Wonderful you mentioned that. I want to, since you mentioned that particular story, I want to connect it to iconography that you find the story in many of those temples, in the Chola based temples. When you go at the back of probably Gangaikonda Cholapuram, or even your Brihadishwara temple. At the back there will be a Lingodbhava standing. All the Lingodbhava concept itself, the pillar of light
Yes.
from inside the linga,
Yes.
and there will be a swan on top,
Yes,
and there will be a tiny boar at the bottom that will be
Yes.
depicted by the sculpture. So that's the story that
Yes.
the sculptors had actually kind of
Exactly.
run. Wonderful, you brought it back. And again, most another interest me, what you will not find in any other culture is that the god is an external. Every other culture and civilization puts the
Yes.
god external, outside, the circle of man and, the
Yes.
earthly plane,
Yes.
and put it as an abstraction. But we are the only culture where, it's like they also have, even in that dimension, they
Yes.
have to undergo certain things, and they have to come down to earth to do penance and go back. That's a very,
Exactly.
very another interesting point of view that we have to probably, this, the next generations,
Generation.
and
Yes.
pretty much my generation also,
Yes.
many people wouldn't be able to understand that.
The whole relatability aspect is so clear in our culture, in our Puranic stories, in our Puranas.
That's where the katha actually begins.
Because every time he leaves some leftover food, I'll be like, Annapurna Devi gussa ho jayegi.